So I'm looking at the flames and I'm meditating on that. And then God turns to me and he says, would you like to go into those flames? And and so I my initial response was, "Well, no, no, God, I really don't want to go in those flames." But my husband and I are very, very committed to being surrendered to God. And no matter what he tells us to do, we don't tell him no. And so there have been many, many times throughout our lives that we've been together since we've been living this life of surrender, where God has indeed asked us to do things that we did not want to do, things that we were scared to do, that we knew were going to be really painful, that we absolutely did not want to do. But when you start living a life of surrender, you give up your right to say no. So anytime God asks us to do something, it doesn't matter whether we want to do it or not, even in these visions. And so I was like, okay, God, I don't want to go in those flames, but if you want me to, you know I will. And so he looked at me and I could feel him nodding. So I'm like, all right, God, give me mercy. And I was scared, I had a lot of scary moments in this vision. And so I'm just, I'm asking God, please go with me. I'm hoping it's not going to be painful. I'm in my mind, I'm thinking of all of the early Christians who were, burned at the stake. And so I stepped toward the fire and I close my eyes and then I step inside the flames. And the moment I step into the flames, I was transported to another place where I have been many times. And this is the last place. We're almost done. And I call this place the Tightrope. And so let me tell you, I've been here many, many, many times. So let me tell you about the very first time that I ever had this particular vision, so you'll understand what it's about. So the very first, this is actually the last of the 6 visions in this Join Hands with Heaven vision series. And so the very first time I ever had this vision, here's how it started. I was standing alone in this very isolated, desolate looking place. It was this desolate landscape of just all of these craggy rocks, no greenery, nothing, just this very harsh looking environment. Kind of similar to this, only there was no sun. It was very, very foggy, creepy looking. And so I didn't like this place at all. I'm looking around and then I look down and I see that I'm standing at the edge of a cliff. And I'm standing close enough to the edge that I can actually look over the side and I can see that it is scary, terrifyingly far down to the bottom, like hundreds and hundreds of feet. I'm not good at distances, but way, 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 way down there. And I can see that all at the bottom are like flames. So like I'm looking down into hell, and I step away. Now, something about me, I do not like heights. I am terrified of heights, actually. Now, I'm not a fearful person, but in my case, it's very, very wise for me not to stand on ledges because I'm very clumsy. So like I trip over my feet all the time. I could be sitting in a chair and spontaneously just fall on the floor. So it's very wise for me not to stand close to cliff edges. In fact, if I do need to, for some reason, who knows what kind of crazy reason, look over at the edge of a cliff, I will crawl on my belly to the edge. So I stepped away from that cliff. I was not happy about being there. I was very scared. And then another scary thing. And then I noticed kind of over to the side, there was a tightrope going from the cliff edge out. And so my eyes follow the tightrope all the way out. And I see that way, 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 way far away, there's another cliff way over. So, and the tightrope goes all the way across to the other side. I did not like that very much. So I'm like, okay, surely God does not want me to walk across this tightrope. So what I was looking at, I was standing on the edge of like this crevasse, right? This fissure in the ground going way, way, way down into hell, I guess. That's what it looked like. Then I noticed there was a person standing on the edge of the other side of the tightrope. And I could see he was kind of waving. And so I'm looking, I'm like, and then I realized that's Jesus. And he's not waving, he's beckoning. And I'm like, no, Jesus. I will do whatever you say, but please don't ask me to walk across this tightrope. I can't do it. I'm too clumsy. But he's like, come. And then I could start hearing him. Like he was yelling, I think, but it was so far away, it sounded like a whisper, come. It's like this. And so I'm like, oh, all right, please help me not to fall off this thing. So I walk over to the edge and I put my foot out on the tightrope. And I'm just praying. I'm like, God, help me. And so I put my other foot. And so I start walking out on this tightrope. And it kind of looked like this. Only there were not pretty trees underneath. It was all fire under there. So I'm walking. And I'm maybe 10 steps out. And all of a sudden, everything, the tightrope starts wobbling, and I'm like, so I drop down and I grab the tightrope and I'm like, I got my eyes closed and I'm like, Jesus, help me, Jesus, help me. I'm hanging on. I got my eyes shut as hard as I can. And then finally I opened my eyes and I'm looking at Jesus's feet. So while I had my eyes closed, he had walked out on the tightrope and come to me. So he was right next to me on the tightrope. And so I kind of look up and there he is. He's looking down at me and he's smiling and he goes like this. And so I grab his hands and then he lifts me up. And so I'm standing up right in front of him and he's just staring at me. He's just looking at me. And I do see Jesus often in these visions. And when he gazes at you, all you feel is his love for you. It just encompasses you. It's like soothing to your spirit. It's just so wonderful. And so he was just smiling at me and looking at me. And then while we're holding hands, and he doesn't stop looking at me, but he starts slowly walking backwards on the tightrope. And so I'm matching his steps. And so the moment I held his hands, I felt no more fear. All the fear left. And I knew I'm with Jesus. It's going to be okay. And so he's walking me across the tightrope. And then I realized what this vision means. So the tightrope is my life. Okay, it's my life. And in order for me to get across, the formula for getting across my life successfully is to be hanging on to Jesus as hard as I can and looking at him. I didn't look to the left or to the right. I didn't look behind me. I didn't look down. I only looked at Jesus. And as long as I looked at him, it's like Peter getting out of the boat. He guided me across that tightrope safely. And so we're walking across the tightrope. He's walking backwards. I'm following him. And then it had looked so far away, but as I'm with Jesus, we were almost immediately to the other side. And so as we got closer to the other side, I looked over and I had not noticed this before, but there were hundreds of people on the other side. And so as we got closer, they started reaching out their hands to me. And so when we got close enough, Jesus kind of put my hands in their hands and they pulled me up onto the edge and pulled me, away from the edge and pulled me into safety. And they were all hugging me and very, very welcoming. I felt very loved. And I knew these were other believers, the body of Christ, and they were welcoming me, and they'd probably already walked across the tightropes. And so then after a while, I looked over to see where is Jesus. And he had already walked away from us, and he had gone back out to the edge. And so I saw that where he was standing, there was I could see my tightrope, but where he was standing on the edge was kind of like this hub of like a spoke or like the center of a wheel. And that all of these, there were hundreds of other tightropes kind of fanning out from where he was standing, going across this crevasse, across the valley, the gully, to these other cliffs on the other sides. And I could see that every single tightrope had a person either standing at the other edge, getting ready to walk across, or they were already walking across in different locations on their tightropes. And so I could see Jesus standing at the edge, looking at one of these people, and he was doing what he had done to me. He was, come, come, come. And then as we're all watching him, this always makes me cry. He stepped out on the tightrope and started walking toward the next person. And then the vision ended. So that was the first time I had this vision of the tightrope 2 years ago. And again, it was the last vision that I had in this series. So you can read about it in this book. But anyway, so this time, back to this vision, I stepped through the fire and I was immediately on that same tightrope. And Jesus was already standing in front of me and he did his hands like this. And I put my hands in his. And the moment I touched his hands, this electricity shot through my body. And God told me, this is my resurrection power, this electricity that you feel. This is my healing power. This is Holy Spirit power. This is power of deliverance that you feel right now. And it was so powerful that it just kind of lifted me off my seat, like in the real world. And it hurt. But he told me this. And then that was the end of this vision.